All right, folks, we're here with Shawn Fleetwood from the Federalist. Shawn, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So you've got a list of the 10 troublemakers that belong on Santa's naughty list for this Christmas, perfect thing for our holiday episode here. It must have been really hard to narrow it down to just 10, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scummy people in the political world, so getting it down to just 10 is pretty difficult. But what I was trying to do with, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. What were you trying to do with it here?
Well, I was just really trying, we've had a really draining 2022, so I kind of wanted to give something people to laugh at, but also kind of look at and say, wow, these people have done some pretty crappy things over the past year.
I know, and I see on this list you got all sorts of people, not just American politicians, but people from all over the place. But just because we only have about a 10-minute show here, I think I wanted to start off and do maybe the four worst. Obviously, you can go and for our viewers, you can go and check out Shawn's article online at the Federalist. But you got a number 4 here. You have a Republican on here. I thought Republicans were supposed to be the good guys, at least the conservative ones, but the pro-freedom ones. But you have Senate Minority Leader, still the Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell at number 4 on the list. Why do you have Cocaine Mitch so low on the list here?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to believe that Republicans will fight for our values, but a lot of them in general don't. Mitch McConnell being a most notable one, I think. I mean, during the 2022 midterms, I say he's probably the biggest reason that we didn't take the Senate. You look at states like Arizona, New Hampshire, you had Trump-backed candidates, Blake Masters, Don Bolduc, who flat out said during the election saying, we're not going to support Mitch McConnell for majority leader if we get elected to the Senate. And so what he did through his Senate Leadership Fund, PAC, was pull millions of dollars in ad spending out of these states. And rather than, prioritizing it and seeing if we can get these two candidates elected, he redirected those funds to Alaska, which was a safe Republican seat where you had incumbent Lisa Murkowski running against Trump-backed challenger Kelly Tshibaka, pouring upwards of $7 million into that race.
Yeah, and I mean, Lisa Murkowski, really, I mean, that's a senator who, she says she's a Republican, but she votes with Democrats on all these critical issues. A lot of nominees during the Trump era, she was kind of the reason that we couldn't get as much accomplished. And you have Mitch McConnell out there saying, oh, no, we're going to divert campaign funds from, really tight races to go to someone who's not even going to be a reliable Republican vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's done a lot of other terrible things too. He was one of the senators who voted for the Democrats' gun control package that never would have passed without Republican support. He didn't hold his caucus together the other week when they voted in favor of the Disrespect for Marriage Act. And just right now, as we speak, he's helping Democrats and Chuck Schumer pass a major omnibus spending package that will basically negate any advantage and leverage that House Republicans will get when they take over the House in January next month. So he's definitely a part of what I like to call the uniparty. He's not in it for conservative voters. He's always been in it for himself. And that's why you saw why he made the decisions that he made during the 2022 elections. He doesn't care if the Senate or Republicans are in the majority or minority. All he cares about is if he's in power.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, check off Mitch McConnell on the naughty list here. Obviously, we've seen a groundswell of kind of people a little bit angry about how he handled Republican Senate prospects. But the next guy you have on here is head of state, Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Why is he on here?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Trudeau likes to go around prancing about, claiming he's this defender of freedom, claiming he supports bodily autonomy. When Roe v. Wade was struck down, he was out there, oh, it's a woman's right to choose. But yet, when it came to the COVID vaccine, he was one of the most prominent enforcers of forcing his citizens to get this experimental jab. And so I'm sure a lot of people remember back in February, you had the truckers convoy that went to the capital of Ottawa and protested these mandates on the trucking industry. And rather than allowing these protesters to speak freely and speak their minds, he used what's called the Emergencies Act to crack down on them, to freeze Give, Send, Go, and GoFundMe accounts that were trying to raise funds for these truckers. And on top of all of that, he's also declaring a climate war against the country's farmers by capping fertilizer use. So, all in the name of climate change, right? So, I mean, this is a guy who loves to claim, again, that he's this great beacon of freedom, that Canada's this free nation in the world, but he's acted a lot more like Xi in China, if you ask me.
Sure. And you saw the interview kind of recently, probably, where he got called out by Xi for, going on the record and talking about their private comments, and he couldn't even really stand up to him there. But what I also noticed about Trudeau is that he seems to be the first person to talk about how like the right of protest in other countries that aren't his, because the second it happens in his backyard, oh no, you start shutting them down on social media, start making it so they can't even crowdsource funding, and really calling in the police on everyone. Kind of pretty hypocritical to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of all that, he's also working to strip gun rights and strip people's ability to own guns in the country as we speak. So, I mean, the guy's just a total flack and a hypocrite, and I think there's a reason that he looks like a young Fidel Castro.
Heard that theory before. Did his past blackface occurrences kind of put him at number 3 on this list?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that, but absolutely, that's another reason just to have him at number 3, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Talk about hypocrisy. But now we have another head of state, President Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, on at number 2 on this list. So he didn't make number 1. And, you look around, things aren't going so great in America these days, whether it's inflation, the border, crime, really anything. How is that not enough to make him number 1? Why is he at number 2?
Well, when we get to number 1, I'll give a good explainer on why the number 1 person's number 1. But as far as Joe Biden goes, I think for the large part, a large swath of Americans understand that he's not actually running the country, that he's more of a puppet and a figurehead. But he absolutely has done so much to wreck the country in his administration. I mean, you talk about the war against the fossil fuel industry. We're seeing skyrocketing inflation. Our southern border's practically non-existent. In the fiscal year 2022, you saw 2.3 million illegals that were encountered by Customs and Border Protection at the southern border. And that doesn't even include the hundreds of thousands of gotaways that, we didn't even apprehend. So, I mean, the country's just going to a total crapshoot. So absolutely, he deserves to be number 2. But as far as number 1 goes, I'll save that for later.
Yeah, obviously, I think Joe Biden would make it on anyone's list here. Probably number 1 for some people. But for your number 1, you have another so-called saint among the left. Not Saint Nicholas for Christmas. You have Saint Anthony Fauci.
Yeah,
that kind of makes sense to me. Yeah, what do you think?
I like to call Anthony Fauci, or compare him to, like, if one of Santa's elves went rogue and just wrecked Christmas for the world, because that's basically what he's done. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who's out there right now pimping the COVID jabs, which we know don't prevent transmission, telling people to give these jabs to their kids, to their infant toddlers, when we know that children are the least at-risk demographic when it comes to COVID. Mm-hmm. And right now that we know that these jabs have some pretty serious side effects. I mean, you had the Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, put out a study in October revealing that there was an 84% increase in cardio-related death among 18 to 39-year-old men. Mm-hmm. We're also seeing reports and studies of impacts on women's menstrual cycles and, their reproductive health. So, I mean, this guy is just the most malevolent figure that I've ever seen in public politics, and is a public bureaucrat. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a reason that he's retiring by the end of this year, because he knows when House Republicans take over next month, he's going to be dragged before some committees and forced to answer for some of these atrocities that he's been a part of.
Sure, regardless of whether he says he's, stepping down or trying to get out of public life. I mean, I think you got to really hold people accountable, and we have to hold, Republicans who have gotten elected accountable to actually go through with this kind of stuff, maybe more than hearings, actually, pressing against these kind of people. But is there anyone on this list? Obviously, 10 people. You can go check it out online at thefederalist.com. Anyone would be like an honorable mention for this list that you weren't able to include in the top 10?
I mean, Nancy Pelosi is always a good one. I mean, you can include Paul Pelosi on that list too. I mean, he got a DUI earlier this year, and some other stuff that, there have been theories about that I'm not going to mention because don't want to get anybody in trouble, but
yeah, earned him a couple points apart from BAC, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, any of the 12 Republicans who voted, the Republican senators who voted in favor of the Disrespect for Marriage Act. I mean, the consequences of that cannot be overstated enough. I mean, what that is going to do is allow the left and radical LGBT activists to essentially use the legal system to declare war on the church. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard of the Colorado baker who was sued for refusing to bake a cake for a same-sex couple. That's going to become the norm now. That's going to be unleashed upon not just individuals, but Christian adoption centers, Christian universities. This is only the beginning.
Any faith you could make this argument for if they're disagreeing with what the left wants to see. That you've seen they'll bulldoze anyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think at the end of the day, for the left, leftism isn't an ideology, it's a religion for them. And so they will always see these various idols, whether it's the rainbow jihad movement, whether it's the COVID jabs, whether it's the masks. They always find these different kind of pagan idols to follow. And I think until we kind of reconcile that and come to terms with that, we're not going to find efficient ways to push back. And I think that that's something we absolutely need to do if you want to salvage what's left of this country.
Yeah, though that's a real interesting take there. Haven't thought of it that way, but yeah, definitely some pretty crazy things. But Shawn, we really want to wish you a happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas, and hope everything goes well for you in the new year.
Yeah, same to you guys. Merry Christmas.
Yep. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. God bless.
Take care.